Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting up 2 squads of Noise Marines. I will never follow my own advice of only doing 1 squad at a time when it comes to troops, so we're doing 12 of these suckers. Alright, here are all the paints I used, and varnishes, oil paints, whatever, as well as some that I did not showcase in the video. And they are assembled up to the point they would get in the way of painting. So their whole bodies and legs is one piece. I actually really like that. It lowers customization, but it really cuts down on work time. It probably cut like an hour or 2 of work. The arms are assembled onto the guns. The head is separate on their sprue. Their backpack is fully assembled, and that's it. And I prime them all with black. Now I don't show it, but I base coated every single model and piece with Naggaroth Night as a foundational color instead of just the black. Now, I forgot to get a picture of the actual paints I used for the first step, but I used Pink Horror and Fulgrim Pink because, so I actually spoke to the clerk at the Games Workshop, or the guy, the black shirt, and he told me that these were the paints that were used on the common stuff. So I was like, alright, I will try them, and turn off my brain. So let me explain the process. Essentially, so these guys are essentially black and pink, and it's random depending on the piece of armor and stuff. So basically, I sort of divide them up and would try to make sure I equally painted like different parts, different colors and stuff. So I first start off with Pink Horror as the base color. This took around 2 coats, and it would be random. I'd have all the pieces lined up, and it would always be random. You'll see me do some random parts here and there. Some will have certain legs, some will have only the upper body, some will have more black, some will have more pink and stuff. And it took around 2 coats each to get a solid coat of this. Now, I'm not that good with painting round, circular things to any good quality. So essentially, I'm taking the long way. Now, while I use my brush heavily, because I had a good foundational color and I did around 4 layers of different colors in total, the future layers took almost no time in comparison. The first layer took the longest to get a solid color. And once this was done, I went with Pink Horror, and I mixed in a bit of Fulgrim Pink, and then applied it on the more raised areas. Then I did the same thing, adding more Fulgrim Pink, applying it on the more flat raised areas closer to the light, and then finally a thin line of Fulgrim Pink on sharp edges, sharp parts of their armor and stuff. There's very few of these. So even though this looked like it took a long time, it didn't. And I will say that this model kit required me to really organize my models by how random things were. Alright, with Corvus Black, Eshin Grey, and Dawnstone, we're going to be painting the black. I don't like pure black because, I mean, there's no depth in it. So, with Corvus Black as a base layer all over, then with Eshin Grey on the larger face plates and stuff like that, make sure it's watered down a bit so that it is a little softer on the color transitions. Then I went with Eshin Grey and Dawnstone, and I applied this on the more raised areas, more places closer to the light, and then finally with Dawnstone, sharp lines on the most sharp edges, which is very few. It's like the top of their knees have like this crenellation? I don't know how to describe it, and their chest pieces have like this sharp bend in the front for some reason. And with Administrative Gray and Gray Seer, I'm going to be painting their cloaks or tabards, or whatever that thing is in the front is. But basically, just keep it simple. Administrative Gray all throughout, and then Gray Seer highlights on the more pronounced front areas, essentially. Alright, with Kabalite Green, Sybarite Green, and Krieg Khaki, we're going to paint, there are two guys that have capes, essentially. So Kabalite Green all over, inside and out. Sybarite Green, purely covering basically 80 to 90% of the model. Only the deepest, darkest recesses will still have Kabalite Green. Then we're going to do a mix of Kabalite Green and Krieg Khaki, close to about 1-to-1-ish, and highlight basically the inside of what we did with Sybarite Green, focusing on the raised areas, flat areas that are open to the light, and the edges. Then we're going to do Krieg Khaki on the the center point edges, the centers, and stuff like that. And then with the exact same colors, we're going to paint two of the backpacks that I've gotten have little tassels on them. And so basically Kabalite Green base, and I'm going to edge highlight Sybarite Green on the little pronounced strings. And then I'm going to do the same thing with Krieg Khaki on the bottom parts of these strings at the end. Yeah. Alright, it is at this point that I decided I'm going to be using oil paints. So there's going to be a noticeable change in how I'm doing it. I'm going with 1 to 2 colors to create the highlight first. So with Pro Acryl White, which is basically just a good white color, a good white paint, I'm going to paint the faces and the inner bodies of the guns. Yeah. And with Nightquestor Flesh and Catachan Flesh, we're going to reverse highlight basically the leather. They have some straps here and there, like their belts and stuff, and so basically Nightquestor Flesh all throughout, and then a thin line of Catachan Flesh all the way through it. It's an easier way of doing the thin line highlights. Looks a little bit different, but simpler. And as far as the leather goes, I went a little bit back and forth with the two colors. Alright, with Duraluminum, and I actually don't use Iron Warriors, we're going to paint all the base layer of all the silver metal, essentially. So Vallejo Duraluminum is essentially a highly pigmented and easily flowing paint. And the reason I choose it is, apart from being a bright silver, it's really easy to work with, and there's so much edge work and stuff because of Chaos Marines and stuff, that this really makes the process so much easier and faster. It's like night and day difference. And basically I use this to do the edging on everything. So, with Steel Legion Drep and Xandri Dust, we're going to paint the skin. There's like 3 or 4 heads I chose that have no helmet. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try hard contrast and then fill in the gaps. So basically Steel Legion Drab is the base, then I took Xandri Dust and applied it on the very top of their heads. Then what I did is I did continuous mixes where I mixed in Steel Legion Drab and Xandri Dust together at different levels, at in-betweens like half and half, or 1/3 favoring Steel Legion, 1/3 favoring Xandri Dust, and I filled in the spaces in between to make it look like there was a good color transition from Steel Legion Drab to Xandri Dust, and it came out really well. I'm going to experiment with this further. Alright, and now I immediately experiment further with the idea. With Bugman's Glow and Cadian Flesh Tone. Basically, Bugman's Glow all over the flesh for the models. So 2 per kit have skin on their armor taped on or nailed in. And so Bugman's Glow all over that. Then I'm going to take Cadian Flesh Tone and basically focus on the most raised areas and highlights. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start making mixes in between and then try to get a good transition between the colors. We're probably talking about like 5 layers, 1 of Bugman's, 1 of Cadian, and then 1-to-1 of each, and then 1/3 Bugman's, 2, and also 1 that's 1/3 Cadian in between. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for sure. Now with Vallejo Steel, which is a darker metal, and the Vallejo paints go on wonderfully, I just apply this on all the guns, the gun barrels, bodies, and stuff like that. Or not barrels, what is it? Basically the bodies. I want them to be a darker steel. Alright, with Fulgurite Copper, because of the name, Skycorax Bronze, and Lamian Median, I'm going to paint the gold colors. So, first, Fulgurite Copper all over. On all the places are going to be gold. So they have like jewelry, their belt buckles, some hooks here and there on their guns, some medallions here and there, and filigree on their guns. And essentially, Sycorax Bronze, I saw this, so Sycorax Bronze is actually more like a gel than a paint. And I saw somewhere that Lamian Medium could help it be a better paint. Not exactly, so that didn't really work too well. So just Sycorax Bronze on the edges and the flat planes and stuff here and there. Now, back with Kablite Green and Cyberite Green. So there's a bunch of hoses and stuff all around their armor and the metal parts and stuff. So I wanted to do the metals and then this. So like doing the paints in their proper order. So Kablite Green on all these hoses, and then Cyberite Green on the more like the part of the hose that's closer towards the light. Yeah. And not necessarily a mistake, but not necessarily the right idea, mineral spirits and oil paint. So magenta, green, and black. And so let me go over essentially what I did. So magenta with a little bit of black and mineral spirits to dilute it, turn into a wash. I applied this essentially all over the model. Now I wanted it to be a thinner one so I could apply 2 coats for better control. And with green, I did the same thing, just pure green onto the white parts of their guns and stuff, and to build up layers and such. Now, here's the thing. This, in some areas, this was good. But in most areas, this was bad. It dampened some of the colors in some areas. Even though I wiped it off later with a makeup sponge later, there were some issues. Like the oil paint, great in the hands and fingers, really identified the digits better for any mistakes I may have made when originally painting them, so that was good. But it was a bit inconsistent in some areas, and the colors didn't work too well in other areas. And if I was to do oil paints again with this, I would do oil paints only on their fingers, the skin that they have on some of their armor plates, and a little bit onto the gold areas on their backpacks and stuff. But I have to believe that Naggaroth Night as a wash would have been better. And now with Pro Acryl White, Administrative Gray, and Emperor's Children, we are going to basically fix up some areas from the light. So essentially, with the white, we're going to water down a bit, reapply it in some areas on the guns and faces and stuff to bring back the brightness. That's all we're doing. Administrative Gray, which actually this is the wrong color. I chose Gray Seer in the end to re-highlight their capes and fix up any issues from the oil paint. And Emperor's Children, which is a color I forgot I had, which would have been much better. I discovered it later when I was going through my pinks in the section I have far from me. And essentially, I just used this to highlight some areas and stuff that were probably messed up by the oil paints. And that's it. And Sybarite Green to fix so like these canisters and stuff they have around. I forgot to mention it, but basically that has Kabalite Green and then Sybarite Green on top, and I just reapplied Sybarite Green to once again brighten the area. Yeah, and that's it for that. And then I use Pink Horror to paint. Apparently their guns have eyes. Alright, now what I'm going to talk about here is something that I've never really had to do before. Organize for assembly. Normally, like, it's just plain out obvious, but essentially they have their legs are different, their chests are different, like armor patterns and stuff. Their shoulder pads are differently colored between black and pink. And so essentially, what I did was I organized their bodies and stuff. So I basically started with the body, and then I found like if it's too pink on the legs, there's too much pink, I'll add more black with its giving him a weapon that has black arms. Or if there's too much pink, give him black shoulder pads. Or if there's too much black, add some pink. And so I tried to balance it out. At the very beginning when I was painting what was pink and black, I did like do opposites. Like on this one, the chest will be pink, then the next one, the legs will be pink, or I'll do some variation of that. And so I went in cycles of like 4, sort of. Same thing with their guns and stuff. And so this was basically me trying to organize to make sure that all of them had an equal balance of pink and black, if that makes sense. And then I did final assembly. And then with Army Paint's Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, that's not what it is. This is actually basically a gloss. I don't know why they call it that. An AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish. I'm going to now spot varnish some things. So first off, the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, which is actually a gloss, will go on to certain gems that they have around. I skipped showing it because anyone knows how to paint. You can paint them whatever color, it doesn't matter. I did 1, 2, skip a few, and just knocked out a few of their annoying details here and there. Basically, matte varnish on gloss varnish on things that should shine, which is just gems. After that, what I did was I mixed the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish with 1-to-1 Ultra Matte Varnish and a bit of water to wipe out the whitening effects that both of these shines seem to have. And so what I did was I would apply it onto places that I would touch on a battlefield. So the metal paints seem to stick really well to the model, so I didn't really bother varnishing them. But the fronts of their guns, some of the bodies of their guns, like their arms or some parts of their calves, their calf armor and stuff, I would touch that and they would get ruined, like over time. And so because these are magnetized, they will be in a magnetic tray. They're not going to actually have any trouble or problems with being scraped against some sort of box or foam. And so I basically just varnished the places that I was going to touch them. And when these two mix together, it creates an effect that's very similar to what the when you paint with a brush. It has like this somewhat shiny, glossy, but somewhat matte effect. And so these two combined fixes that. And I assembled the models entirely, and pretty much done, yeah. Alright, and done. So, I'm going to watch what I say here because this is generally a positive channel. I tend to be positive. I'm trying to mimic, I guess, essentially Bob Ross in some ways, and just enjoy the joy of painting, yeah. But there's one aspect of me is that I'm very critical of myself and stuff. So I'm going to be more specific on these details. I really was unhappy with the process of painting these models. Now, in the end, alright, these are tabletop ready. Absolutely. Are they above average? Absolutely. Are they fully painted? Absolutely. Are their bases pretty good? Absolutely. They came out much better than their predecessor. So when I say I'm not happy with these, so behind the scenes camera stuff, I've actually been working on these guys for a month. You've been seeing videos come out every 2 weeks. Yeah, those Genestealer characters I released took me like 2 days each, and I just padded out the videos to give me time to relax on other things and focus on other things. But I've been stuck on these guys for a month, and well, okay, in reality, like 20 to 30 hours of painting over a month, but that's just, life gets in the way. But there are a few issues that I have. First, I genuinely do have trouble like painting like circular cylinders with lighting and stuff like that. I just am not good at it. Like give me some guy with buff biceps or fur or bones or armor plates and stuff, like Tyranid armor plates, and then I have no trouble. But Space Marines and even Chaos Space Marines are very round and circular, and so I have to artificially create the light points and stuff, and that causes me trouble here and there. And so I turned to oils because these guys were getting too bland, too bright, not too interesting. The oils helped in some areas, but they also caused headaches otherwise. Overall, what I'm essentially saying is the models seem to be a little bit too bland, and they're a little bit too messy. They're not as bright as they should be, like the shadows and the lights are too similar to each other. In some ways, these models are very successful. The pink and black armor came out pretty well, but it took a little bit too much effort. Basically, it took me too long to do something I could have done elsewhere. There's still a lot of experimentation, so I just basically see the model, I start painting, and I see where I go. After painting these, I learned a lot more, and I probably could have skipped a lot of steps, a lot of redundancies and stuff, and these guys could have been finished much sooner. But I did have a lot of trouble with them. It is a rough one to say, and I also copied the black shirt at GW who sold me on those paints, and I did not realize this, but I already had a Fulgrim pink, so I just bought a second Fulgrim pink on. It's like, screw me, my god. Yeah. So essentially, I learned a lot. I should have done this one at a time, so the second kit could have been better. Probably sold the first one to make it better so I can redo it. But essentially, I would rate these 7 out of 10 simply because they're not as good as they could be. I chose the worst way to do most of this stuff, and they're a bit too messy for what has been my standard. That's what I mean, is like, are they better than average? Absolutely. Could I have done better? Absolutely. Did I choose the worst way to paint these guys? Probably. But I learned a lot, and when I move on to the next kit, which I don't know when that will be, because a lot of weird things happening right now, I will probably be able to chunk them out much faster because I know what really works, essentially, much better now. Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. So, like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share, comment if you want to comment, and send a prayer to me that I'll actually get to play this army before it gets nerfed into the ground.